Father, brother Jesus, we learned how much love you have for us. We share the love back with you. Now we're learning how much responsibility we have to the Supreme Being and joining you in the creation of a perfect universe among many perfect universes. We welcome the chance to learn more about this and help us to listen carefully, to question a lot, to understand better. And thank you for your love. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Michael. So before I start, does anybody have any comments or something that they want to share just to start the day off, or shall we get right into it?
It's so good to see
Andre.
you, Stuart.
Huh?
It's so good to see you.
Oh, thank you so much, Donald. I appreciate that too. And Andre, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I would like to share something very interesting among all of you. I have a friend who read the book. He's an Asperger. You know what is Asperger? It's close to autism as Asperger. And I wrote to him because I find out in Paradise there was some Trinitized son who behave like Asperger. The vesicule is 22.10.8. And I wrote to him and I say, look at that. Because in Paradise, there are some Asperger, some autism, the high level. And he sent me back a letter, an email. He was so greatly inspired by that on our planet. And I want to share that because probably among our relatives, there are some people who suffer, it's not a suffering, but who are Asperger or as autists. And by the quote I gave you, we look at that with a different eyes and in our with our celestial Father, we learn to see different person, different character. Thank you.
No, thank you. I did a study once, and I did this on the Foundation's UAI type course. And I gave a talk on the Trinitized Sons of God and their nature. In other words, if we go to a six-stage finaliters, we may trinitize with a Havona citizen or a Paradise citizen as well. And it's almost like what we do here as man and woman. We create a third person of perfection. Now it's like when when the Father, the Universal Father, and the Eternal Son come together, they create a new trinitized third person, which is the Infinite Spirit. The whole energy of trinitization is an amazing process. It's not well understood. It's actually quite confusing, but the idea that we may at time find a perfect counterpart in concept, and that we will now, it's almost like finding your eternal soulmate, because we will be connected together, but we will also create a third personality presence based on our trinitization together in that act. Now that blows my mind. And it tells me that, for instance, we think that when we leave this world, that there's no longer intimacy. We know what intimacy is between a man and a woman, but that's mostly physical. And I know in my case, I never worked on the physical. To me, the physical was just an expression of the spiritual. And I never did anything in a physical way unless it was spiritually motivated and centered. Now, consider this. Do we, as we get into our Marancha bodies in our mansion world experiences and onward, are we no longer going to be intimate with another personality? And I posit that that's not going to be the case. We will have intimacy like crazy. For instance, the 100 Jerusalem citizens that went with Caligastia to start Dalmatia some 500,000 years ago, they found out that there was a way of physical and spiritual intimacy that created the primary midwares. And this was an act of intimacy with another being that created, again, that spawn of trinitization. In the days of Adam and Eve, it was a similar kind of thing, that there was this kind of act that they could do a combination of physical intimacy along with spiritual intimacy, and they created the secondary midwares. Now, I would say, as we go into the mantra worlds and beyond, we're going to meet personalities not necessarily of mortal origin, but celestial origin as personalities. And we're going to have a sense of such a delight of intimacy with them, say an angel or whatever. I think that intimacy is a part of the human experience all the way up through the material, the Maracha ascent, and even the spirit ascent. That there is, you never lose this need of intimacy with another personality. And that to me is an amazing thing. So that's just it. I just want to say, not a lot of people think about that. But I believe our whole career, our whole destiny is going to be filled with opportunities of intimacy with other personalities. And that the way of expressing it, I believe it's going to be a great joy. And you know, and it's not quite like the physical intimacy. As I said, in our lives, a lot of people go to the physical first, and then somehow they develop the spiritual connection. I never did. I could not get intimate physically unless I was intimate spiritually with another human being. Then it comes in naturally. And that's just the way I've always been. So that's it. Any comments on that quick before we get started today? Or are we all, yes, please, Royce. And then Donald.
Just as a response to that, I would imagine that trying to, I don't want to say it's putting the cart in front of the horse, but it's like if you're looking for the spiritual connection first, that almost limits your choices, because now you've already whittled out and eliminated a lot of possible choices. That sense of intimacy that you're talking about as we leave here and go further up, I would almost think, as you say, usually the physical comes first, but we're at the animal level here. But as you go up, it's almost like it's a platonic relationship, but purer, because a lot of this, maybe side, peripheral, hidden agendas that we might have are operating less the further we go up. So that connection is more honest and pure and direct, because we're not trying to achieve other side projects or whatever. It's what it is right in front of you. It's intense and it's pure and strong.
Yeah, no, thank you, Royce. And Donald, you're up next, and then Janice, and then Rick.
Thank you, Stuart. Just a very quick quip. In terms of putting the horse in front of the cart, of course, tantric yoga has been utilized for thousands of years, presumably in the East, and it's a relatively new kind of concept for most North Americans or Western European cultures. But tantric yoga, the melding of the spirituality connection and the physicality connection as one, has always been there. So I'm not surprised that you're not living in China or someplace, Stuart.
Thank you, Donald. Janice.
I read somewhere in the Rancher book that somewhere along the way, and it's quite along the way, we're going to the sexual whatever, that if we come together with another being and create something, we can create something that is amazing. And if it's new and it's never been created before, it's going to be a gift. It was amazing to read that way up there where we are, we're still going to be able to come together with another being from, doesn't mean our own, and create something that is mindful and spiritual and physical, and it takes in all of the aspects that possibly could be. Then we can come together, and you and I, or me and something else, my personality and another personality, can come together with an idea and create something that would never have been done before and could be added to the larger whole. I don't know where it was, but I remember reading that and thinking, yes.
It's exciting, isn't it, Janice, to know that? I mean, when you think about that, that's just an added gift. This idea of celestial intimacy of a spiritual nature is something that I think, they don't spend a lot of time talking about it, but I have no doubt it's part of our destiny and our ascent to have that experience. Rick, you got the last word, then we're going to get into the course.
Yes, I was going to, as always, Stuart, as a layman, try and substitute a word in there, say closeness. And I agree with what you say here. And just to clarify for myself, our ultimate intimacy or relationship is with God the Father until we fuse in finality with our thought adjuster. Along the way, this arena, this adventure, in the evolution of the Supreme, we will meet up and become very close, extremely close, as we share our experiences, our knowledge, and everything. And we can use the word intimate, closeness. But again, ultimately, all of us are working towards the same goal. And so I agree with you 100% on this, Stuart. Sorry I'm late, and I'll be hiding in the background.
You don't have to hide, Rick. If you got something, share it with all of us. Okay, well, here we're going to go. Royce, I want to stick to you because I always enjoy what you do. We're going to get into the reading, and when it comes to the Urantia book citations, I'm going to go to you for it, okay? So let me go to share screen, and we're going to go back to class 2 first, just to review the key concepts there that I did not have a chance to share with you guys. Let me see if this is the right one. I'm going to take a chance. It's going to be a coin. There it is. All right. And wait for you guys to come on. Let me make it larger. All right. And you should be able to see it now, and that's good. Let's go into the instructional, and we're just going to review the instructional itself, because this is really the foundation of understanding what the Supreme Being is. And a little more. Sorry about that. Okay. Now, here's how I always introduce this idea. The Supreme Being is like us, but of a totality nature, or macroscopic, not a microscopic. We are similar to the Supreme Being because we actually grow the same way, except we are the microscopic contributors to the macroscopic totality nature of the Supreme Being. They say that we are created in the image of God. Now, what does that mean? It means that we have a 3-part vehicle of identity, which includes the body, the mind, and the spiritual soul. So we are created in his image in a body, mind, and spirit nature, all coordinated under the unifying umbrella of personality. Our vehicle of identity is created in his image. Somebody, if you're not talking, please silence yourselves. Royce, you can stay on. Now, the idea that the Supreme Being is also of this nature, of tripart nature, except of the macroscopic level of the body, which basically is creation itself, the whole grand universe. 2, there is Supreme Mind, and we're going to review that today. And then, of course, God the Supreme, which is very interesting. God the Supreme originates from the Trinity and is not existent in the time-space grand universe today, but is existent in the outer edges or the outer reaches of Havona, and is perfect in God the Supreme nature of his spirit nature, but it's not connected to the Almighty Supreme of his body or Supreme Mind within the time-space creation today. But that's what that's our goal, is to bring the emergence of the Supreme Being. So I'm going to ask, Royce, could you please read this citation?
Yes. The Supreme Being is the unification of three phases of deity reality: God the Supreme, the spiritual unification of certain aspects of the Paradise Trinity; the Almighty Supreme, the power unification of the grand universe creators; and the Supreme Mind, the individual contribution of the third source and center and his coordinates to the reality of the Supreme Being.
So that's pretty simple there. They're being very specific about this nature. The Supreme Being has a vehicle of identity, which is not singular or a unity. It is three parts of mind, body, and spirit, just as we are. So if you want to get an idea of this idea of the Supreme Being and his three aspects of his vehicle of identity, it's really a reflection of the macroscopic nature of our microscopic nature being created in the image of God. Now, let me say a few things about this. Here's another one. This is, I love graphics. You guys all know now that when I'm trying to understand a concept, I have always found the Urantia book and the revelators are very amenable to doing graphics because their concepts are so clear. Now, this is a graph of mine, the evolution of the Supreme Being. And in the existential infinite reality of paradise, which is existential, you have the nature of the Paradise Trinity, the eternal Son, the universal Father, and the infinite Spirit. The Trinity itself is the foundation of the spirit nature if you go to the underlying into time-space reality of the grand universe of experiential finite reality. So the foundation of the Trinity is the very foundation or the very center of the nature of God the Supreme, the spirit aspect of the Supreme Being. If you go to the infinite spirit stands out with another contribution. The infinite spirit is a source of cosmic mind, but we're not going to talk about that today. He is also the very center of the energy of the intelligence of the emerging Supreme Being, called Supreme Mind. And then, of course, you have the Isle of Paradise of energy and matter, and the very center of all the foundation of creation itself. But they bring in the term of power can be used in a Newtonian sense. If you take a big ball and drop it down on the ground, there's a power of energy and impact. But they say that's not the only definition. There is a definition also of what they call sovereignty. And sovereignty is mastering the actual grand universe of time and space and mastering it, and they do it on three levels. The seven master spirits are the highest personalities called, what they call the group, the supreme creators. We know of Michael, or the creator's son, as a creator of Nevadon, of the local universe. This is a creator, but then what he does is he starts off as a vicegerent son and authority, but he earns it now where he gains complete sovereignty of his creation along with the mother spirit. And sovereignty is really the center of the energy of what they call the supreme creators. The very highest level of the supreme creators are the seven master spirits, one for each of the seven super universes that make up the whole grand universe. Now, each of the super universes are overlooked now by a group of administrators and rulers called the Ancients of Days. And there are three each for each of the seven super universes, which means there are 21 Ancients of Days within this group called the Supreme Creators. And the Ancients of Days, they are responsible for their own individual super universe, of which there are seven. And there are three for each of them, hence 21. The last one is the Creator's sons, or they start off as Creator's sons, searching now no longer to be vicegerent rulers, but complete sovereigns as master sons. And that's the goal there in the time-space perfecting of the Supreme Being. So that's the idea here. I think this is a good graphic because it has it all there. It shows you what you're looking at and where all the dynamics are interacting. And here's the citation. I'm going to let you read that, Royce. Let me move it up a little bit for you. Have you got it, Royce?
Yeah, where do you want me to start?
The Supreme Being, now actualizing.
Oh, the little box underneath.
Yes.
The Supreme Being, now actualizing in the evolutionary universes, is the deity correlator and synthesizer of time-space divinity, of Triune Paradise Deity in experiential association with the supreme creators of time and space. When finally actualized, this evolutionary deity will constitute the eternal fusion of the finite and the infinite, the everlasting and indissoluble union of experiential power and spirit personality.
They're going to get into what we call power personality unification. Now, personality is certainly the spirit nature of God the Supreme, but power is defined not just in Newtonian power of energy and matter, but also sovereignty, control thereof and over that. So experiential power and personality, this is the unification now being endeavored within the time-space creations and the effort to reach towards light and life perfection. So that's a new term you guys can think of. When you think of power, it's not just power in terms of energy and matter. It's also sovereignty, control thereover. Let me go here. Now, God the Supreme is a consequence of the acts of infinite deity. Although the evolving Supreme Being is in the process of actualization in time and space, the spirit personality of the emerging Supreme Being is fully existent today as God the Supreme. Analogous to our mortal view of ourselves as body, mind, and spirit, the composite identity of the Supreme Being may crudely be thought of as the Almighty Supreme, the body or sovereignty, the Supreme Mind coming directly from the infinite spirit, and God the Supreme, his spirit personality nature. The spirit person of God the Supreme takes origin from the paradise deities and functions in the present universe age only in the perfection of Havona and only on spiritual levels. God the Supreme will not be fully functional in the universe of universes until that time when the final actualization of the unified Supreme Being comes to fruition, the age of light and life, and now the complete mastery of time-space reality in pure perfection. The spirit personality of God the Supreme is directly derived from the Paradise Trinity. Quote, for the Trinity is original deity, while the Supreme is derived deity. The Supreme Being has a beginning in time, not existential. Has a beginning, like the Ancients of Days. They are the very first act of the appearance of time-space reality of the deity level of supremacy. So, prior to the sometime to be completed power personality synthesis, we're going to get into that in a later class. The power personality synthesis of the paradise deities in the experiential universes of time and space. And, quote, the perfect and symmetrical spirit nature of the Supreme Being is revealed in the spirit person of God the Supreme. Within the grand universe creations, the spirit person of God the Supreme is, quote, now actualizing in the three parts of the Supreme Creators, the Creator's sons, the 21 Ancients of Days, and the 7 Master Spirits as the Almighty Supreme on the value level of non-personal activities, hence person and power unification. The power part is non-personal. His spirit person is unifying with his evolving power, quote, as Almighty, the super universes of time and space, as one unified reality, the Supreme Being. That's really the core of what we keep talking about and why I wanted to review this again. His derived personality and spirit attributes are in the process of actualizing in time and space through the combined efforts of the Creator's sons, the Ancients of Days, and the Master Spirits to unify creature experience with Creator divinity. God the Supreme is actualizing as the personal God of time and space. He is personal deity associatively realizing the time-space experiential achievement of creator-creator identity. God the Supreme strives to achieve reality of self and completion of sovereignty within a finite cosmos that is expanding to the outermost limits of possibility. He is emerging as the supreme deity of the finite level of existence. This is evolutionary, not existential, but evolutionary deity, God in time and not God in eternity. The emergence of the fully actualized supreme being is drawing heavily upon these spirit potentials of paradise deity as embodied in the person of God the Supreme. Along with the power potentials of the Almighty Supreme, and I'm glad we reviewed that idea of the Almighty Supreme, God the Supreme is jointly contributing to the associative creative expression of universe potentials that will someday actualize. Remember, the dynamics of time and space is all potentials becoming actualized through experience. The power personality unification of the Supreme Being himself. And I'm going to go back to you, Royce, for this.
To the personalities of time and space, God the Supreme is the personalization of all universe experience, the focalization of all finite evolution, the maximation of all creature reality, the consummation of cosmic wisdom, the embodiment of the harmonious beauties of time, the truth of cosmic mind meanings, the goodness of supreme spirit values.
Isn't that wonderful about this revelation? They give us a thorough understanding. I mean, it's not like they just give us a little bit. This is a complete breakdown, an essay on the Supreme Being, and it's all done with this, dot, 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 dot points in a way that's really quite remarkable. And that's why, again, I always put this into a graphic because it's reviewable. You can go back to it, read it, and say, I've read this before, but every time I read it again, it seems to have a little more value to my understanding and comprehension. Let's continue on. The Almighty Supreme. The time-space growth and emergence of the Almighty Supreme represents both the evolution of the non-personal physical universe, and the sovereign power. That's what I keep calling the sovereignty. The sovereign power unification of the grand universe creators, the master spirits, the ancients of days, and the creator's sons. The unifying experiential nature of the Supreme Being is correlative of both the personal qualities of experiential divinity as embodied in the spirit person of God the Supreme, as well as all of the other than personal qualities that characterize the Almighty Supreme. The impersonal aspects of the universe of universes are equally desperate to undergo unification within the cosmos. But this cosmic unification is nevertheless directly under the sovereign supervision of the Supreme Creator personalities. Doesn't that blow your mind? I mean, this is really such a huge enterprise. The power personality synthesis, and they use that term a number of times, of the Supreme Being, is the unification of paradise personalities evolving the universe. It should be recognized that the expression of power as used here is twofold. There is physical power, that's the point I've been making, that drives the mechanism of the material universe. And then there is the sovereign power that governs the personal rule of the Supreme Creator personalities. This is new in the Urantia book, and this is one of those things that you need to delve. And this is why I'm glad to share with you some of my insights of how I try to understand it. This divine activity of power personality synthesis eventuates. This is beyond time space. This now gets into the eventuation of transcendent time and space, the eventuation of the growing power presence of the evolving deity of the Supreme in the nuclear grand universe. When we reach perfection, all 7 universes and their boundaries will disappear. And all of them will become no longer 7 individual super universes, but one new nucleus of grand universe perfection. A new nucleus that will now start to have an act on the outer space levels, and the search no longer for God the Supreme, but now this second universe age of seeking for God the ultimate. And I got another one here for you, Royce. Let me get into it. There it is, power.
Unmute. Power ordinarily limited to the designation of the electronic level of material or linear gravity responsive matter in the grand universe. Power is also employed to designate sovereignty.
So I'm making the point over and over again, but the Revelations does the same. It keeps reminding us that it's not just power in terms of energy matter, that there is sovereignty is also a characteristic of power. Now, the power prerogatives of the Almighty Supreme are being generated by the Supreme Creator Personalities, again, the 7 Master Spirits, the 21 Ancients of Days, and the 700,000 Creator Sons of the local universes. That's an astounding thing. What you're talking about here is power of a combination of each of their individual collective power as a sole almighty power that's collective throughout all those 3 levels of personalities, throughout the evolving universe of universes. At the dawn of time, at the very inception of the supreme deity adventure into time and space, the 7 master spirits led the supreme creator personalities in functioning as co-creators with the Paradise Trinity in originating the 49 reflective spirits. The reflective spirits perfectly reflect, and this is in reflectivity, and it's not part of our course today, but it's a fascinating topic. These reflective spirits reflect, quote, automatically anything that's going on in reality, all phases of every possible manifestation of the 3 paradise deities as such phenomena might occur in any part of the 7 super universes. And it's known and goes right to the master spirit. Anything that's happening, well, it's like the mother spirit in Nevadon in our local universe. She knows what's going on because her very boundaries of her being are the boundaries of Nevadon itself, the local universe. This co-creative union of the supreme creators with the Paradise Trinity initializes the actualization process of the supreme being. Universe reflectivity. It's an interesting subject. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but if you ever are interested, do a word search on it and find out what the Revelation says about universe reflectivity. It's a process of time-space conditioned omniscience. That means all-knowing, whereby all phases of mind, matter, and spirit activities in the realm of the deity level of supremacy, the supreme, can be known simultaneously. They don't have to go search for it. It's just automatically known through the reflective circuit. This information can be focalized, and they use that, that's an interesting term, can be focalized to any desired point, ranging from the local universe realms all the way to the Isle of Paradise. It is believed that the phenomena of reflectivity is connected in many ways to the activity of the Supreme Mind, which is also omniscient within the time-space activities of the grand universe, and that the universe functioning of reflectivity is a good indicator of the awakening consciousness of the Supreme Being. Upon the final personalizations of the 49 reflective spirits, quote, a new and far-reaching reaction occurred in the deity absolute, which imparted new personality prerogatives to the Supreme Being and culminated in the personalization of Majeston. Now, Majeston is beyond. There are 49 reflective spirits, but then Majeston is sort of like the 50th, and he's the collective focus of all of this reflectivity. And he is also the sole creation of the Supreme Being. The Supreme Being is a creator, and his only creation was the beginning of the creation of Majeston. We're not going to go into that for this course, but it is an interesting topic. And it is the idea of Majeston is the very focal center of all of this reflectivity activity. The reflectivity chief and paradise center of all the work of the 49 reflective spirits and their associates throughout the universe of universes. The personalization of Majeston represents the very first creative act of the Supreme Being, who, in liaison with the deity absolute, signalizes the Supreme Being as a volitional and creative participant in his own self-actualization. Majeston uniquely focuses or focalizes the cosmic presence of the Supreme Mind. Factualizing Supreme Mind is convergent in Majeston as the time-space experience of the evolving Supreme Being. And I'm going to go back to you again, Royce, for this citation.
This will to action was volitional in the Supreme Being, but the stupendous reaction of the Deity Absolute was not foreknown. Not since the eternity appearance of Havona had the universe witnessed such a tremendous factualization of such a gigantic and far-flung alignment of power and coordination of functional spirit activities. The deity response to the creative wills of the Supreme Being and his associates was vastly beyond their purposeful intent and greatly in excess of their conceptual forecasts.
Isn't that amazing? The celestial beings of our Nevedon, they're surprised too. They don't get a book that says, here's all the answers, because there are no answers unless they find out what the answers are. They have to seek for them. And that's an interesting aspect about time-space relationship. There is not a script that's been written. It is being written in a co-creative way of all participating personalities within the grand universe. And we are all part of it, and it all gets siphoned into the macroscopic presence of the Supreme Being. We'll finish off with the Supreme Mind. This is short. Could you read this, please, Royce?
The spirit personal qualities of the Supreme are inseparable from the power prerogatives of the Almighty, and both are complemented by the unknown potential of Supreme Mind.
So they're being consistent and cohesive here in this description, like we do. We're mind, body, and soul. The Supreme Being has his three aspects of his vehicle of identity of a macroscopic level of expression. Supreme Mind is bestowed upon the totality of the finite, whereby the Supreme Being strives for mastery over energy matter. Supreme Mind is the individual contribution of the third source and center, that's the infinite spirit, and his coordinates to the evolving reality of the Supreme Being. The infinite spirit bestows Supreme Mind as the conjoining factor of the spirit person of God the Supreme and the power prerogatives of the Almighty Supreme. The Supreme Mind functions to unify the power and personality attributes of supremacy. This doesn't scare you anymore. It shouldn't. I mean, this is so well written that when you finally get the concept, and I think when I do my graphics, it helps because you can sort of relate back to it. The power prerogatives of the Almighty Supreme are power personalized. There's a term now that shouldn't scare you anymore. It's the yin and the yang now becoming unified together. Power and personality with the spirit of God the Supreme by the Supreme Mind. The creative activities of the Supreme Creators, and we went into all who they are coordinated in the spirit person of God the Supreme on the pilot world of the outer Havona circuit by means of the Supreme Mind. I think we got one. Well, this may be the last one. Could you read that, please, Royce?
The creative synthesis of power and personality is a part of the creative urge of the Supreme Mind and is the very essence of the evolutionary growth of unity in the Supreme Being.
I don't know if okay, well, I'm going to finish here. Let me stop here because I just wanted to do an overview here and especially get a better handle on this idea of the tripart nature of our being of identity and also the macroscopic nature of the supreme being. So I've got now here, I think, Rick, you had your hand up first, and then Carolyn, and then Andre.
I'm good. I'm good.
All right, thank you, Rick. Yes, please, Carolyn.
I would just like to ask you a little bit more about sovereignty.
Yes.
Is it more, okay, Michael gained sovereignty of the local universe by experiencing and mastering the 7 levels. So is sovereignty more than just total mastery of total power personalization? Or is it something separate, or is it just the top level?
Yeah, sovereignty means that Michael has earned as a master son after his souls complete, unchallengeable authority over his creation. He is now, without a doubt, before he was vicegerent. In other words, Lucifer started his rebellion by saying Michael had no independent authority over his own creation, but that was as the creator's son. Now, as a 7-fold bestowed master son, he no longer has to be a vicegerent sovereign of his own creation under the authority of the Father, but he has it now by his own right. He is completely now, totally in sovereign control of his own creation. And that's what we're talking about sovereignty. It's really a matter of control. He is now completely you cannot challenge his authority anymore. He is in complete master son control. Does that help, Carolyn?
Yes, I just, it's just a mastery of, like if he's at the top level, first level, he masters that level.
Yes.
Okay, he's power personalized at that level.
Absolutely.
But he's not. So when he power personalizes on all 7 levels, then he is sovereign. So it's kind of like a level of power.
Yes. In a different definition, isn't it? Power in terms of control. Well, you have a power of, say, a president, a leader. So, are we okay with that, Carolyn?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn, for your comments. Andre, please.
Thank you, Stuart. Stuart, at the beginning of the course, you say we do not have to be scary about what will be teach. Okay, I'm not scary. I'm worried because on everything who have been read today, I only chew a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The little bit I chew is when you say we are made in the image of our Father, you say body, mind, and spirit nature. Something I will to understand about the Supreme, the body is the Almighty Supreme. Is it correct?
Yeah.
Okay. The mind will be the supreme mind.
Yes.
And the spirit nature will be God the Supreme.
Yes, exactly. All 3 of them. That's why I wanted to review that today to make sure we all understood that it's simple, but it's not easy to grasp in its complexity.
Thank you.
Any more comments, or shall we get into actually today's class? Yes, Rick.
I was just going to say what I do in layman's terms with people is you make your bed, you got to sleep in it. Michael and Abaddon, Jesus Christ created this universe, organized, the administrator. He's then mastered life on the 7 levels, and that he's become qualified. He's met the qualifications to be the true leader. And then hence he's given the sovereign power. And I believe it's said at many other places.
Yeah, no, that's really the key thing I want people to understand, the difference between a creator son and a master son. And there's one other detail about being a master son. As a creator son, any personality prerogative that he chose in terms of creation would only repercuss on the time-space level of supremacy. It was contained within the time-space activities and borders of the grand universe. But they say now, as a sevenfold master son, he is no longer limited by time-space supremacy. He now has anything he might enact in personality expression would now not only have impact within time-space, but now into super time-space, the level of the deity level of ultimacy, of transcendent time and space. His prerogatives now, he has to be careful because he cannot express now because he cannot contain it only to the local universe or to the grand universe. Anything he might now express as a master son has no limit even on the level of transcendent time and space, the deity level of ultimacy, which permeates all four outer space levels, and no longer of time-space beings, but of transcending time-space beings who are not limited by time and space. That's a whole different category. Does that help, Rick? All right, guys, great. If no more comments, let me go into now today's session. I'm glad we took the time today to do that. I hope everybody feels it was useful to sort of review class 2. Now, let me go in here to share. Wait for you guys to come on. Okay, and let me get down to the beginning of today's class. And here we are. So these are terms that we've already touched upon today already. Let's review power, personality, impersonal and personal unification. Through mind, the supreme mind is the unifier of the power and the personality traits of this now unifying supreme being. Triune Paradise Deity is unified in the Trinity and is existential as the three persons of deity: God the Father, God the Son, and God the Spirit. In association with Triune Paradise Deity, God the Supreme resides in Havona and is the personal spirit reflection of the unified Trinity. That's a nice way of putting it. The spirit personality of God the Supreme dominates the evolutionary power of the Almighty Supreme. We've been talking about power and personality working together and being unified via supreme mind. So when we read these things, when you read it on your own the first time, I'm sure very little of this would sink in. But I think as a collective, we're working as a soul community and comprehensiveness of what we're trying to understand. So the non-spiritual and impersonal aspects of the universe of universes are undergoing unification with the Almighty Supreme in complete harmony and balance with the spirit personal qualities of God the Supreme, as these are both manifested in the evolution of the Supreme Being. Starts to make sense now, doesn't it? Moreover, this power personality synthesis discloses the active and unifying function of Supreme Mind. The evolution of the Supreme Being is driven by the perfecting mobilization of all aspects of things, values, and meanings within the universe of universes. The actualizing Supreme Being is both the evolving driver and receiver. He's driving the process, but he's also receiving the benefits of this process, of this divine synthesis. It's a good word, synthesis. You have thesis, you have antithesis, and then you have synthesis, bringing the two things that were not compatible into new synthesis of unity. In other words, power, impersonal, and that which is personal is a thesis and an antithesis, but it's now brought into the unification of synthesis via mind. From the finite perspective, the growth of the Supreme is essentially a power personality focalization of the Trinity in time and space, at least as this process can best be comprehended by finite creatures. We can never know fully the Father in heaven because he's more than personal. He's pre-personal, he is personal, and he is super-personal. But we will always be able to know the Supreme Being, because we are part of him, we are part of his growth, and we have an understanding of what he is doing because we're part of that growth as well in the microscopic contributing level to the macroscopic focalization of all of that energy in a new synthesis and a new energy dynamic. We can only comprehend deity unity as it evolves in the power personality synthesis of the Supreme Being. He is going to be the avenue on which we will fully comprehend when we finally reach the end of the first universe age and the perfection of the Supreme Being. He now emerges. All 6-stage finaliters on Paradise now become 7-stage finaliters, and we hit pretty much the end of the first universe adventure, universe age, and that is the search for God the Supreme. And now we undertake, having found him, we become part of him, we become ambassadors with him to the outer space levels on the second universe age, the second adventure of where we will now go out, not searching for God the Supreme anymore, because we found him, we're part of it, but now searching for the next adventure on the second universe age of seeking for God, the ultimate of transcendent time-space realities and values. So the 3 existential persons of deity manifest the divine realities of love, the Father, mercy, the Son, and ministry, the Spirit in perfection. The Supreme Being is manifesting these divine qualities in time and space as a process of power personality synthesis. That should not scare anybody anymore. We're talking about the yin yang. They don't touch each other except through the unifying powers of mind. Mind is the necessary aspect, even on the Trinity of the Father, Son, and Spirit. The Son and his spirit circuit has no interactability with the energy circuits of Paradise. It is only through the infinite spirit, the conjoined actor, hence the name conjoined. The infinite spirit is just as comfortable working on the spirit level of the Son as he is also just as comfortable working on the impersonal nature of Paradise. The infinite spirit is that unifying nature that takes the yin and yang that do not touch one another and reunifies them on an existential level. All right, now here's another one of those graphics. I put these together again to give me a sense of these concepts. And this is part of what we're now talking about, the power personality synthesis. Power, again, is on the side of the coin of the Almighty Supreme, not just energy matter, but also sovereignty, control, and personality, the spirit nature of God the Supreme, and the synthesis of the thesis and antithesis of the synthesis now coming into the emergence of the Supreme Being. And I'm going to ask, is this big enough for you to read, Royce?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Where we just came from, I don't recall seeing it that way, and I know that the greatest thing in the universe is love. But when they partitioned it like that the Father is love and the Son is mercy, and that the spirit is the mind, I hadn't looked at it that. I look at Jesus as love and being represented, but I didn't realize love is the core that mercy comes from. I had it a different way in my head. I had, if you've seen Jesus, you've seen the Father. The Father is love. You've seen that love in action in his ministry while he was here, but he's more mercy than love. That it didn't hit me till at the very core, the Father, if you equate it, he's love. He's the primal thing in the universe. That really hit me when you read it. I didn't look at it that way before.
Well, you know, Royce, you're looking at again. Remember that the all creator sons come as a joint concept of perfection between the universal Father and the eternal Son. So he is really a product of both the love of the Father and the mercy of the Son. And they say that some sons or creator sons are more like the eternal Mother Son, and some are more like the universal Father. In other words, some of them characterize their local universe creation in love. But they seem to say that our Michael carries the traits more of the eternal mother sun, which means our local universe of Nevadon is driven by a higher, not a higher priority, but maybe a higher expression of mercy. Hence the nature of why Michael treats Lucifer the way he did, and so on. Michael is conditioned by the nature of mercy. Now, the third person, of course, of the Trinity is the infinite spirit. And he, along with the love of the Father, the mercy of the Son, is the source of all active ministry. So those are the three operative words of the three person of the Trinity: love, mercy, and ministry. So that's really the sense of it. Let me stop here. We're going to get into a discussion, and we'll finish off after our discussion into God the Sevenfold, which is a very key contribution. So I want to stop here, and we'll get it in.
You don't want me to read that?
Oh, let me see. No, we're good. We're good, because I'll go right into God the Sevenfold. So comments on what we just read today in terms of power personality synthesis. If you've got it, I think we're good. We can keep going on, but you get an idea of what we're talking about and why I thought it was important to review class 2 the way we did today. Yes, Andre.
Thank you, Stuart. I'm sorry to say it like that, but what we will get from the Supreme when he will realize himself, if I'm not wrong, we will get all the experience of all origin mortal being. Is that include the celestial, morantial angel, the experience we will get, or just a mortal?
No, the deity realm of supremacy is a arena for adventure on a time-space scale of constraint. So on that level, though, it encompasses the finite, which we are part of, but also the absolute, of which when we reach into the level of material centers into Morantia centers. Morantia is the warp and woof made up of a combination or an in-between of gray between the nature of the material expression and the spirit person nature. So it is sort of a warp and woof between those two. And what we do is we go through 570 transitions in our next vehicle of identity of a Morantia body with a Morantia mind. And there are 570 transitions that we have on this now series of transitions of learning this nature, of striving from the material level of origin and then rising through 570 different individuations to now try to reach and grasp the nature of spirit ascension. When we graduate from Nevadon, we will end into the point of now being for first times spirit ascenders, where we can now leave the local universe and now take a whole new vehicle of identity now as spirit ascenders, not Morantia ascenders. Andre, you had a comment?
Yeah. A second thing we will get from the Supreme, is it allowing the seventh entrance of finaliter?
Yes. When finally the Supreme Being emerges in perfection, what it means is there is nothing new on time-space that can be done again. A complete adventure. I talked about last time the mountain of the Supreme Being. We know from the Master Architects that the Father knows what the Supreme Being is going to emerge in his perfection, in his full mountain. And that happens when every single footprint of topology of the Supreme Mountain has now been experienced. And you reach a point that there is no topology of time-space origin. You can't create anything new. And the same thing with the mountain of the Supreme Being. There is going to be no topology on your way to the summit and finding the Supreme Being that's now new and one of a kind. And that's officially when the Supreme Age ends, when the perfection of the grand universe occurs, and the Supreme Being emerges in full perfection, and each 6-stage finaliters now becomes ambassadors and connected within the Supreme Mind as ambassadors now of the perfected Supreme Being and the end of the first universe age of adventure.
And to conclude, Stuart, is it at the emergence of the Supreme that we will be called the children of the Supreme?
Absolutely. And also, I suspect that there will be a consciousness that we will share within the Supreme Mind now as brothers and sisters, as representatives and ambassadors now of Supreme Perfection. Why do we have to go out into the outer space worlds with the super time space beings out there, the transcendental beings? Because they have a deprivation. They don't know what constraints of time and space are. They are beyond time space limitation. And they do not know time space adventure. And they're not going to be able to get to Havona unless they traverse through now the new nucleus of the perfected grand universe of time and space. Why are we going out there? We're going to go out there because we will be preparing them now for breaching into the perfected nucleus of the grand universe perfection of time and space. And they're going to have trouble. It'll be our job to prepare them before they can find Havona to interact with time-space constraints. And that's going to be our job. But then everything is reciprocal. What we give, we receive, because we're going to learn now what it is to be transcendental. What we give. Yeah, isn't that an amazing thing, though? I mean, to me, that whole idea of the gift of God to do that is mind-blowing. Royce.
Yeah. We'll kind of be switching roles. I hadn't realized before, as you outlined earlier, that while Jesus was a creator's son, everything that he did, the ripples of it, cascaded out into the time-space sphere. But once he became a master son, now the effect that he has is not only in the time-space, but also goes into the next level. I didn't realize that. And that when the Supreme comes to the end of that age and everything's in light and life, and we go to phase 2 of what he's going to be, because he's fully emergent, and it's like he's taken himself off his moorings, and now he's starting to actively participate and direct and become part of what this new evolving universe is going to be and its adventures. We now have a new connection to him because of his now emergence into this full maturation state. But we also still have that connection to Christ Michael, who is now a teacher's son. The effect he had on us when we were here and as we go further is we're still connected in a way. Is that correct?
They tell us that when we, for instance, when we leave Nevedon and we say goodbye to Michael and Mother Nevedonia, we start our spirit ascent towards Havona. They say that the spirit of truth will always, forever, be connected to Michael via his spirit of truth. It is not a localized event or phenomenon of his spirit of truth. We will always be, for eternity, connected to Michael, Master Son, at all levels. And that, to me, I love it. The fact that we're not orphans. We have the Father, the Paradise Father. We have the Supreme Being, and we have the Spirit of Truth that will connect us to Michael for eternity. That, to me, is a gift.
So
on understanding.
So as in a sense, cosmic astronauts veering out into these new regions, we have 2 umbilical cords, one to the Supreme and one to the Spirit of Truth.
Yes, absolutely. And that's going to be, and again, this is going to be, and as we become spirit ascenders and beyond, the Spirit of Truth will become more and more powerful with us. The idea with the Spirit of Truth is we will never be alone or separate from Michael, ever. He will be with us. We are, remember they say he is our local universe father. That's not just a saying. He truly is a father on the local universe level, and he loves us on the same level. He who has seen me has seen the Father. He is also the Father in that nature. But I think it's really heartening to know we will never be orphans. We're going to be ambassadors of the Supreme Being. The Supreme Being and his nature will be part of our nature, and we will share it among each of us as children of the Supreme. That's really a cool thing as well. So when you think about these things, the graces that we have been given the gifts of God are incredible. And it's so heartening to know. So, yes, Mike, good brother.
Let's see if I can split this out. I don't know if it's going to come out very well. I think of the Paradise Trinity as the initial Trinity, but as the existential Trinity, but the first experiential Trinity being the Supreme, the Master, the Creator Son, and the Supreme Personalities, and then the architects of the Master Universe. And I was trying to see how that is connected, how that relates pattern-wise from the Paradise Trinity. You have the Supreme Being, you have the Supreme God, the Supreme. You have and now I'm probably wrong on this, but the power aspect of that would be the Creator Son, Ancients of Days, those creators of that master, of that super universe. And this is where I get confused. Where do the architects of the master universe come into play? How does that relate to, or maybe it even doesn't relate, but I was thinking of existential Trinity and the first experiential Trinity, which is those three. Can you shed any light on where do the master architects fit in this though?
Yeah, it's a good question, Mike. And I do have an answer that I'm going to try to share with everybody here today. Remember, they say that the time-space arena, or time and space of the grand universe, is enshrouded in the pre-echo, the transcendental reality. That means before the activities of time and space and the ancients of days, there is the blueprint of God's purpose and plan as he is now intended to be carried out and fulfilled on that level. And that's called the blueprint. Well, they don't say the blueprint. They say the master architects. But why is that term so important? Because architects have a blueprint on which to build. Now, they don't build with the transcendental level. They feed that energy of the blueprint into time-space reality and drive the process of the emergence of the Supreme Being.
Wow.
When you talk about God's purpose and plan, it's already there as destiny. There is a destiny to be carried out in the blueprints of the master architects. Now, they also say that the transcendental level is pre time space, but it's also post. They call it the pre-echo. That's poetic, but the pre-echo is that which is before the noise rebounding within the canyons, but also the echo of it as having repercussed. So they say no reality from paradise comes into time and space except through the shroud of the transcendental. That's really the answer. What it means is nothing happens in existential paradise into the time-space realm except through the pre-echo shroud of the nature of the encompassing nature of the transcendental space level, time-space level.
Wow.
And that's where I like the term master architects. It makes sense because they have a blueprint. The blueprint is the reality of the building, but saying it's there and it's all spelled out, but it has to be carried out within the arena of time-space supremacy.
Good explanation. That explains the architect. That blueprint. It's the pre is the transcendental before. Exactly. Then you have time and space, and then you have the post echo, which is the repercussions into the ultimate.
And they even call that, in time space things evolve, but in transcended time space, the reactions, the echo aspect, is called eventuation.
Right.
This is beyond evolution. For instance, they say that when we create in the perfection of the Supreme Being, the true brotherhood of man, they say that the brotherhood is not an evolution, it's an eventuation. It's already destined in the blueprint itself. The brotherhood emerges as a eventuation now of a reality that is now made real within the dynamics and the catalytic arena of time and space. So things eventuate because of what's happening within the cauldron of time-space.
Mm-hmm. It eventually will happen. Gotcha. Okay.
Well, thank you. Hey, Mike, you're really hitting up some good hard ones. I like it. Punch hard, brother. I like a good punch. You did it good. Thank you so much for all of us. I got Lee and then Vincent.
The way I look at it is this: you've got 100,000 creator personalities in each of the super universes, and each one of the super universes I look at as a flavor of the Trinity. Okay, so in other words, a flavor of the Trinity striving for the maximum of truth, beauty, and goodness. So each flavor of the Trinity is striving for this. We happen to be in one of those super universes, the universe of mercy, and so forth. And so, as such, as beings in this universe of mercy, we will have that particular flavor of Trinity throughout our careers.
Yes.
Now, as we hit the Supreme, as the Supreme is actualized, okay, and the Supreme, we begin to get the Supreme mind in our toolbox. Okay, that allows us to take all the best of truth, beauty, and goodness in the finite universe. That's in our toolbox. Okay, but we still have that flavor of the Trinity specific to the super universe that we started in. And it makes sense because everybody would have a flavor of whatever super universe they came up through. And it takes everybody, it takes all the permutations of the Trinity to come up with a repleteness of the Supreme to begin with. So it makes sense in the way it's all structured. And the fact that we get that the spirit of truth, which is in a sense, is that maximum of truth, beauty, and goodness in our particular local universe. We get that with us. So that particular flavor of the Trinity is always with us and helping us to achieve, greater things. And we also get the Supreme that helps us in the next level, the time-space transcendent aspect of our journey. And that's the way I kind of understand it.
No, I think you've got a good understanding, Lee. And I'm going to put it this way, too. The 7 super universes are portraitures, as you say, of the natures of the 3 deities of the Trinity. For instance, super universe number 1, 2, and 3 are the primary aspects of portraits. The first universe is the Father portrait. The second one is the Son portrait. And the third is the Infinite Spirit portrait. Then we have 3 dualities of deity combinations of dual deity portraitures. The 4th super universe is the Father Son. The 5th is the Father Spirit. And the 6th is the Son Spirit. 2 dualities of deity combination portraitures. And then, of course, we're number 7. We have the only triune portraiture of all 3, the Father, Son, and the Spirit. And that gives us a sort of an advantage because every super universe emphasizes one of those portraitures. We, coming from the 7 of all 3 together, there are special things. For instance, we rarely will fail in our seeking for the deity presence of the Father on Paradise as we seek for him. Not so with mortal ascenders from the other super universes. For instance, those from number 2, the Eternal Son, where they don't have a direct connection to the Father, sometimes find it difficult. On Paradise, in their search for the deity presence of the Father, and then they have to go to another super universe to get that experience that will help them a second time, at which they say, we will not fail the second time to find the deity presence of the Father. That's a whole different topic, guys, but I'm glad it's brought up because it is sort of an overall picture of the challenge. Vincent, I'm going to go to you and then we'll finish up our reading.
Like Andre, I'm chewing on bits and pieces here, and I'm waiting for it to digest. I kind of wanted to, in my mind, and Royce, you brought up a thought to my mind that we're losing Jesus in this whole scenario of things. Where does he still fit in? What is he doing? How much allegiance do we Well, I don't see it that frequently in many of these classes, to tell you the truth. Where it all started with Father, it is, and I wonder, is Father still in process in some categories? I don't think I think he has all power, but he is in process. Is he gaining more sovereignty in this whole program of what's taking place? I was just trying to think about the very purpose of all of this whole program that the Urantia book lays out, with its almost infinite number of entities that make this program work. Is it for Father personally in some sense only, or is it that love that his purpose is to create the immortality and eternal life of men, which is, I guess, maybe his ultimate purpose? Was he? I guess he was lonely, created the Son and him created the Spirit, and now all of us. So my fundamental question is, Father is in process in some respect, even though he's omnipotent, all powerful, not in all senses then. Anyways, those were some of my thoughts, but the Supreme and what you've laid out here is a lot to chew on. And it's, I'll read your book again.
Okay. Well, listen, Vincent, I'm going to give you one answer that helps me understand it. We get hung up sometimes on the idea where even in the Bible it says, I am God, I change not, which sometimes leads you to the idea that he is not connected to his creation. And that's not the case under any determinant, because consider they say that when he creates, that he now creates to escape the fetters, the jail cell of time-space limitation, or being of existential limitation. He is now, by divesting himself of all powers that he can, he has escaped the fetters of eternity and infinity, which means he is now fully capable, as a father, of completely integrating himself into our lives individually. We are extremely important to us, and he is an active and dynamic father to each one of us. And he is fully operative, and he fully embraces his, the reciprocity of not only making us sons and daughters, but he now receives the fatherhood nature in true time-space impact. So the answer is, in my opinion, Vince, that the father is completely involved with his adventure and arena of time-space in the first universe age, and that he is totally enjoying. I mean, if God can enjoy it as a personality, he is enjoying it. We certainly know he embraces his fatherhood nature to each of our daughters and sons in the family of God, and it's highly active. And, when Jesus said to his own physical father Joseph, he says, "How can my father love me less than you?" I mean, in anything, the father is perfect in that aspect. And dynamic, that's the key. He is not untouchable. He is not immovable from his own creation. Does that help, Vincent? All right. Rick, you got something, then we're going to get back and we'll read the rest of today.
Yeah, just real quick, Stuart. I always like to have a simple answer. God, and so this is my 2 cents. Love in and of itself, if I'm sitting here, I can be full of love, but it's really no good unless I can share it. If I'm a God and I create life, well, okay, here's this life, but if that life can't be lived and shared, what good is it? We've been given the gift of love and life.
In sharing our inner life with him, they say the greatest gift we give to him is sharing our inner life. That's a value to him. Yeah. So let's go in and finish off we still have one more concept to understand today before we're finished. And let's go to this. That right one? Let me see. Okay, that's nice. So I gotta go, let me stop sharing, go back to the other one. All right, let's get the right one here. What I want to do is finish off today with God the Sevenfold. Okay, so that's not it. Let me go back again. What did I do? Let's try one more time. It's got to be this one. There it is. Okay, we are here. So I'll wait for you guys to come on. This is not a huge concept, but I do want to talk about one of the confusing aspects that in my first few readings of this Urantia book, cover to cover. I was confused by the concept of God the Sevenfold. You have so many gods. I mean, you have God this, God that, God this, God that. I got to the point and I struggled with understanding how is God the Sevenfold God? And it's not. It's a poetic term that they're using. God the Sevenfold is the 7-step ladder from paradise downward all the way to the local universe creation to us on even Urantia itself. Let's start at the bottom here. Well, we'll go to the top. Remember, from our level of the local universe, we start off in the local universe with the Paradise Creator Sons. That's the first bottom rung of the ladder as we start our ascent to paradise, starting with the nature of the Paradise Creator Sons. We then go into Orvanton, the 7th super universe, and we start to strive up now as spirit ascenders, seeking the second level of the Paradise Creators, and that's the Ancients of Days. And of course, when we reach there, we get to the point of recognizing the 7 master spirits, and collectively, those are the sovereign creators that we've been talking about. Now, the middle rung of the ladder, as we start climbing, is the Supreme Being himself. He is the 4th rung on the ladder as we ascend towards paradise. And he is active on that level. On the other side of the coin, from time space, now we enter into the top 3 rungs that connects paradise to earth. God the Spirit, God the Son, and God the Father. So the 7-fold ladder is really a descending of paradise personalities downward and the ascension of paradise or ascenders up the ladder, connecting towards paradise. It's a ladder of steps, downstepping of paradise reality of existential, and there are 7 downsteps or upsteps as we leave Nevadon in our search for the Father and paradise. Now, let me read what I said about it. The associative deity relationship of the spirit persons of God the Supreme with the absolute power of the Paradise Trinity is power personalized in the universe of universes on 2 phases of creative supremacy. The expansion, 1, of God the Sevenfold. In other words, the reaching out of paradise in 7 steps, all the way down to us and our level, and our ascension as we work up the 7 rungs of the ladder of God the Sevenfold. The expansion of God the Sevenfold. And remember, Lucifer denied any value to the 7-fold ascent. He said, let's not ascend mortal beings because there's no purpose for it. And of course, that's really a terrible thing to say. The expansion of God the Sevenfold and the experiential power of the Almighty Supreme are power personalizing, unifying as one Lord, the Supreme Being. We've already gone into that. Now, here's the definition. God the Sevenfold is a working association of deity. The evolutionary growth of the Supreme generates consequences in the universes of finite time and space in 2 contrapositive directions, up and down the ladder. Intensively inward, upward to paradise and original deity, and extensively outward from paradise to the limitless possibilities of the experiential deity, the Supreme, the ultimate, and the experiential absolute. In the ever-expanding master universe, this dual transmutation of deity potential to deity actuality in experiential reality is revealed in the descension and ascension of present universe personalities on the seven-rung ladder of God, the sevenfold. Now, I have it here, but I have a better graphic on it. Let me go up here to the actual graphic. Just a second here. And let's move down. Here's my graphic. The seven-rung ladder of God, the sevenfold. And this puts it all together in my understanding. Let's stop from the highest level of the ladder, the Isle of Paradise. And on there, we'll have the innermost presence of the deity presence of God the Father, and then enshrouded by the presence of God the Son, which is enshrouded by the presence of God the Spirit, the Paradise Trinity. And we know that in Havona, which is co-creative with the God the Spirit, the infinite Spirit occurred at the same time that Havona in eternity appeared. And God the Supreme now resides there. So you have that aspect of the top three rungs of paradise, the middle rung now of the cooperative Supreme Being, and then the bottom rung from Urantia as we climb the ladder from the Paradise Creator's sons, leaving Nebadon, seeking the ancients of days of the seven super universe, and then seeking up to the actual presence of all seven master universes. That group there now we call the Supreme Creator Personality. And that whole energy now is not just power in terms of energy matter, but also sovereignty. And the three aspects of the ladder, the outermost, the seven master spirits, are the whole grand universe presence, the third rung on our way up. The super universe level is the ancients of days, which is the second rung of our ascension ladder. And then finally, the local universe of Nebadon is the very first rung of God, the sevenfold. So what I'm saying here, God the sevenfold is not God per se, but it is a process of God reaching to man and man reaching to God. It is a dynamic of God ascension and God ascension, God seeking and God revealing. Let's see if there's here. So I'm not going to, some of this, let's see. Royce, could you please read this citation?
The Supreme ever intervenes as the experiential spirit personalization of the Paradise Trinity and as the experiential focus of the evolutionary almighty power of the creator children of the Paradise deities.
See if there's anything more here I want to talk about. Yeah, these again, this is just a different way of putting God the sevenfold, starting from the creator sons and all the way up to the Father, or reverse. I like my graphic, the other one, because I think it's more poetic. Yeah. Read this, please, Royce.
Ascendant finaliters, having been born in the local universes, nurtured in the super universes, and trained in the central universe, embrace in their personal experiences the full potential of the comprehension of the time-space divinity of God the sevenfold, unifying in the Supreme.
So do you get an idea? This is really more of a dynamic of ascension and descension, both of them working in together in this dynamic now of God reaching to man and man reaching to God, up and down the ladder. I don't know if there's anything more. Yeah, so I'm going to stop here because we pretty much are finished with the day. But what I want to do here is if there's any questions on this idea of God the sevenfold, because it is an odd concept and it takes a little time to chew, as we've been talking about, to digest it. Rick, do you have a comment? Turn your sound on, Rick.
Sorry about that. I just forgot to lower my hand. Sorry.
Okay, that's good. So any more comments here, or do you need time to digest this? Did I do enough to cover all of these things in a way that you didn't get totally lost on it? Royce?
I just wanted to say I like what you said. It makes it easier to put in mind that God the sevenfold isn't an actual aspect of God as much as it is as a process through which we go. We get in touch with each of those levels of God and deity, whatever. But don't think of it as one thing as much as a poetic, almost as you said, the ladder through which we ascend, the process that we are in to evolve and to move on. Yes.
Doesn't it remind you a little bit of some of the old Christian art of angels ascending a ladder to heaven and angels descending? I always loved that one painting of the ladder to heaven and the up and down process of this personality ascensions and descensions, God revealing himself and man finding God. So it is, and that's what I'm saying, God the sevenfold, for me, was a challenge. I should have probably understood it better, but I didn't. I struggled with that term for quite a while. I hope that my experience helped you guys understand it together.
Yeah.
Any more comments here, or we've got 4 more classes, and I'm glad we reviewed class 2 today. I thought it was of some value to do so. So I thank you all very much, and you guys are incredible. Every one of us on this page, we worked together. And I hope I tried to moderate and lead and set the concepts in a way that we could all grasp. Royce?
Yeah, I was going to say, you're not being here for that second class. Had you not gone over it today, that would have been a blind spot for us. You helped to clear up and fill that blind spot with what we should have gotten from that lesson. Now we can go forward on firmer footing because we have a better grasp of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I made that decision finalized yesterday. I said, oh, this is how we're going to do it. And I'm glad I did. I think it worked well. It was a lot of reading. But again, I love you all. You guys are incredible. I can't wait till next week.
Thank you.
And, love.
Thank you, Stuart.
Bye all.
Bye, everybody.